During the late 80s and early 90s, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles dominated the beat-em-up genre, with Turtles in Time as its undisputed king. But the 90s are long gone, that castle has crumbled, and while the beat-em-up genre is still alive, they're not the same mindless, quarter-crunching button mashers of old. They've evolved. Mutated, even. So, with the Turtles back, can they do the same? Can the heroes in a half-shell reclaim their throne in the modern era? Can they recapture that classic feel while still bringing something fresh to the table? And of course, there is always that question that's just lingering in the back of our minds. Is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge better than Turtles in Time? Despite its one big, glaring flaw.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles! Shredder's Revenge.
So, at first glance, Shredder's Revenge looks like it's more than capable of living up to the hype. Even as early as the first trailer, it was obvious that Tribute Games were not pulling their punches, as they showcased the return of our childhood heroes with style. Classic 2D arcade-style action, fun and goofy animations, fan-favorite characters, a whole new adventure, while still nailing the fundamentals, like 4-player no, not 4-player co-op, 6-player co-op. Yeah, take that, X-Men Arcade. Wait, my bad. What I actually meant to say was fully online 6-player co-op for both the story mode and the arcade mode, with lobbies that you could just hop in as if you were slapping down a quarter in the arcades. Features, by the way, that the Turtles' classic rivals like the Battletoads or Streets of Rage are missing from their big revivals. And whether you're hopping into a random game or just starting fresh, you'll be kicking shell in no time, as the combat in TMNT is very simple, easy to pick up and play, as any good beat 'em up should be, with controls and movements that are buttery smooth. Every fighter feels like they just shedded the stiffness of the classic titles, stiffness that we never even knew existed. Seriously, just play some classic TMNT and then play this, and you'll see what I mean as your turtles just shift into the different combos so effortlessly. And just as effortlessly as you'll be able to swap between fighters, as every character essentially has the same moveset. You've got a basic button mashing combo, a charge strike, a jump attack, double jump, an upward strike, run attacks, grappling enemies lets you slam them down, or more importantly, pull that patented TMNT screen throw. You've also got a taunt that's used for more than just styling all over your enemies, and of course, it just wouldn't be a current gen game without a Dark Souls roll. There's also special moves, but we're gonna tackle those a bit more later, as they kind of go hand in hand with the game's bigger problem that I mentioned earlier. And just know that despite how each character plays, they don't exactly feel the same. Like in previous games, Donatello, for example, is much slower but has greater range, where April O'Neil is crazy fast, but just doesn't do that much damage. But, believe it or not, it's not our heroes that make the combat shine so much as it is our villains. And I don't just mean the bosses. Once again, the Foot Clan are on the attack, deploying technicolored robotic foot soldiers to bring our heroes down. And just like in days of old, there are more to these mechanized monstrosities than meets the eye, with each color being armed with different moves and weapons, like guys with spears, axes, shields, and projectiles. Rock soldiers, triceratons, and a multitude of other mechs are also thrown in for good measure, forcing you to think a bit more about how you're going to approach each type of foe beyond just simply button mashing. Sort of. And seeing all these returning enemies, characters, moves, environments, that awesome fully animated 2D opening cutscene with the original theme song, there is no doubt in my mind that Shredder's Revenge is more than just a beautiful 2D action game, with its bright colors, quirky animations, and painstakingly crafted details. This game is a love letter to the classic TMNT cartoon, the games, and even to the genre itself, as this game is just jam-packed with references that go so far beyond just your standard cameos. And while there are just too many to point out all of them here, I do want to mention a couple of my favorites, like how Michelangelo's specials are pulled straight out of the OG cartoon opening. The double jump attacks are exactly the same ones used in Turtles in Time, and you can't even tell me that the balloon popping segment in this carnival isn't a reference to another classic Konami beat 'em up, The Simpsons. And while I can't confirm these ones, Dimension X looks oddly familiar to a stage from Konami's other classic arcade game, the X-Men. And seeing Rocksteady's grenade attack here makes me wonder if the devs played that amazing TMNT fan game, Rescue Palooza. It's free, go check it out if you need some more awesome TMNT action. Plus, the references and callbacks don't just stop at the visuals either. In a beautiful touch, the original TMNT voice actors reprise their classic roles to really lend that feeling of authenticity to the game. Like, yeah, this belonged in the classic era.
Big Apple, 3 p.m.
Oh man, I just fixed the party wagon.
Party, dude!
Shredder's Revenge is also just stuffed with iconic remixes of classic TMNT tunes. I mean, just check out this boss fight with Krang. The way he splits himself in two is just like how he does it in TMNT 3, The Manhattan Project. And the music is a remix from that battle. That said, of course the game's music isn't just remixes and throwbacks. Tons of new tunes, including a surprisingly good number with actual lyrics, are also peppered throughout, bursting with energy for a shell-shocking good time, which you absolutely will have. But, as I teased about earlier, the game has one pretty big problem, and it wouldn't be fair if I didn't talk about it, as well as a few other minor issues. But to understand them, you have to know your options first. Firing the game up, you actually have two options available to you, the story mode and the arcade mode, both of which are fairly similar, and despite the naming conventions, both modes actually have you playing through the story, complete with cutscenes. Guys, you will never guess what's happening this time around. Hear me out. Shredder, this might be a surprise to you, but Shredder is being evil. And you have to stop him. I know, pretty standard stuff, but honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. Would you? What actually sets these two modes apart are how they are played. In the story mode, you select levels via the map screen, where you can replay stages, find collectibles, and complete side missions. You're also able to quit at any time and come back. Overall, it's the more laid-back casual mode. But, more importantly, your character starts at level 1 and gains experience throughout, acquiring more health, lives, special bars, and special moves. The arcade mode forgoes all of that and just drops you straight into the game with a set special bar, set lives, and all your moves already unlocked straight from the get-go. No map screen, no repeating stages, no continues. It's just the harder, more classic arcade experience. Though, honestly, the gameplay doesn't really change that much between the two, and neither do the tactics you use to beat them. Which leads us to our biggest issue that I have been hinting at this entire time: the specials. In story mode, once you've unlocked them all, you have 3 variations of the special. The standard one that works as a bit of an AoE attack, the aerial special which definitely does the most damage, and a running special. You can also use all your special bars to go into a kind of super mode, but it kind of sucks, so don't bother. Up by your health bar is where you'll find your special meter, which can be filled up to 3 bars in the story mode or 1 in the arcade. You fill this meter up by attacking foes, and if you're playing on the hard difficulty, another layer of challenge is tacked on as your progress resets if you take damage, which is the default in the arcade mode, by the way. Now this is a great system as it rewards skill, dodging, and learning enemy patterns. Except that it is completely undermined by another way to fill your meter: taunting.
You're too slow!
Hi!
Spamming the taunt during fights, preferably when you have allies around to cover you, or in between waves of foes, is pretty much how most gamers are going to be playing. And while the number of enemies and difficulty increases by the number of players, really, nothing's going to stand much of a chance against 18 specials going off in a row, or even just 5 or 6 in the arcade, which includes your eyes. Yeah, good luck keeping track of yourself during this onslaught of particle effects. If you really want to see what Shredder's Revenge really has to offer, you might want to go in solo, on hard, because that's where you'll really get to see this game's complexity and enemy diversity come to fruition. And it can be brutal. It's also where you'll start to notice the minor annoyances, like how so many enemies have super armor, basically attacks where you can't break them out of their animations, and that you really don't have any invincibility frames of your own outside of the specials. So you really need to learn those patterns, figure out how to dodge and when to hit them in order to survive. Really flaunt those awesome ninja skills. That, or, you know, just abuse the specials. And sadly, this kind of trivializes the majority of the game, as a lot of the enemy mechanics, such as having to beat these guys by jump attacking them first, gets thrown by the wayside by the constant special attacks. And while most certainly not necessary early on, charging up your specials between waves or even during battle is the most surefire way to survive. Personally, I think the game would have been a bit more balanced if they dropped the taunt bonus altogether, especially since it gets annoying hearing it over and over and over again. And instead, just made both modes only charge by attacking. Maybe have all 3 bars in each for strategy, and just have it charge up a bit faster, or just not vanish when you get hit. Yes, I know, you don't have to play that way. It's your choice, play however you want. Enjoy the game to its fullest. But the thing is, if you're playing on hard, and especially if you're playing alone, it's kind of a necessary strategy to win. Plus, if you're playing online, pretty much everyone is constantly using it. So with that in mind, I've got a little recommendation for you. If you haven't already, and maybe this is kinda obvious, I think the best way to experience TMNT Shredder's Revenge, at least for your very first playthrough, is actually on the hard difficulty with 3 to 4 players max, probably in the story mode, and of course with your friends, so you can all work together without the need to spam the specials as much, because trust me, the randoms will. Plus, with buddies by your side, you can take advantage of the new co-op mechanics like reviving downed allies or sharing health between each other via a high five. Now that is a mechanic I haven't seen in a beat 'em up before. And speaking of new mechanics, that brings us back around to the question I raised at the start. Does this new TMNT game bring enough new to the table to reclaim its throne at the top? Honestly, I'd say it's definitely a contender. The fact is that Shredder's Revenge doesn't really bring anything new to the genre, or even branch out that much from what made the original game so beloved in the first place. But the funny thing is, it doesn't need to. The original games still hold up to this day, and Shredder's Revenge takes that groundwork and just runs with it, shining as possibly the best looking and sounding beat 'em up to date. It fully takes advantage of its source material in ways that few games can, and it absolutely scratches that nostalgic beat 'em up itch that so many retro fans have been yearning for, while still modernizing it just enough to get new players in on the action. While the special mechanics do tend to undermine a lot of the great enemy design, and the final bosses are a massive letdown if you ask me, way too easy, they're no deal breakers. If you ever love TMNT at any point, enjoy beat 'em ups, co-op games, challenging solo games, consider yourself a retro gamer, or just want to support bringing back classic franchises with real love behind them instead of, you know, just the standard cheap cash grabs, then you owe it to yourself to check out Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. And if you want to know if it's better than Turtles in Time, well, that's up to you.